The text arrived at 7:42 on a Tuesday morning. Mom, the mortgage is due. No hello. No good morning. No. How are you? Just 5 words and a period, delivered as if I were a bank notification instead of the woman who had stayed awake beside my son through chickenpox, algebra exams, and the heartbreak of his first serious relationship. I stared at the screen while my coffee cooled. What I eventually wrote back would change everything, but to understand why, you need to know who I had been before that morning. My name is Evelyn Harper. I'm 61 years old, and for 34 years I was married to a man named Richard, a high school shop teacher who could repair almost anything with an engine, a hinge, or a loose wire. Except his own heart. 6 years ago, Richard collapsed in our backyard while raking leaves. He was gone before the ambulance reached our street. After the funeral, something changed inside our family. Richard had always told me, "Let them figure things out, Evie." He believed our children needed to stumble sometimes. I never did. My son Jordan was 27 when his father died. He was married to Lauren, a sweet but nervous woman who worked part-time at a pharmacy. My daughter Claire, 23 at the time, was engaged to Daniel and dreaming of turning her love of flowers into a small downtown shop. I loved them both so fiercely that after Richard died, I became the person he had always warned me against becoming. I became their unlimited safety net. 3 years ago, Jordan and Lauren wanted to buy a house on Chestnut Ridge Court. They were short $15,000 for the down payment. I gave it to them. I told myself I had been saving that money for a kitchen renovation. The renovation never happened. Then Jordan fell 2 payments behind on his car. I paid the balance before the finance company could repossess it. When his sales territory changed and his commissions dropped, I quietly began transferring $550 into Lauren's account every month to help with their mortgage. 14 months, every single month. Claire wasn't any different. I helped her open Pebble and Pine, her flower shop, with $8,000. When a competitor opened nearby and her rent became difficult, I gave her another $8,000. 4 months before everything changed, I wrote her a $4,000 check because a supplier was threatening to stop deliveries. I never regretted helping them when I handed over the money. What I regretted was everything I had stopped doing for myself. Richard and I had saved for years to visit Italy for our 35th anniversary. We never went. After his death, I kept telling myself there would be another time. There wasn't. I also wanted a stone bench beneath the rose bushes in our backyard, dedicated to Richard. That money disappeared into Claire's rent instead. At 61, I suddenly realized something painful. My children didn't simply need me. They had begun expecting me, and there was a difference. The truth finally reached me on a Wednesday afternoon when my best friend Marissa Grant called. "Evelyn, congratulations," she said. "For what?" Silence. "The dinner," she finally answered. Lauren posted pictures Sunday night. Jordan, Lauren, Claire, Daniel. They were at the Wooden Spoon. My stomach tightened. "What dinner?" Marissa hesitated. They were talking about the future. "You really didn't know." 20 minutes later, I was sitting in my parked car, staring at Lauren's social media post. There they were, 4 smiling faces. Champagne glasses raised. The caption read, "Building our next chapter together." 41 people had commented, "So happy for you all. This is going to be amazing. What an exciting new beginning." I zoomed in on the photograph until I could see every face, except mine. I called Claire that evening. She answered casually, "Mom, I heard you had dinner with everyone Sunday." A pause, then it wasn't a big deal. "What were you discussing?" Another pause. Finally, she admitted Jordan and Lauren were considering moving to Millbrook, closer to Claire and Daniel. They had been looking at houses, discussing schools, and even talking about creating a joint college fund for the grandchildren. Then Claire said something that made my chest go cold. Jordan had also wondered what would happen with my house someday. Not now, someday. They were already including my property in their long-term financial planning. I sat at my kitchen table that night beneath Richard's photograph. "I don't think they see me anymore," I whispered, and somehow I could almost hear his familiar voice. "Let them figure it out, Evie." For the first time in 6 years, I listened. The next morning, I called my bank. I canceled the automatic $550 transfer. I didn't announce it. I didn't threaten anyone. I simply stopped. And for the first time, I allowed myself to wonder what my own future might look like if I wasn't constantly paying for everyone else's. A month later, my phone lit up at 7:42 on a Tuesday morning. "Mom, the mortgage is due." I stared at those 5 words, then I smiled. Not because I was happy, because I finally understood. The mortgage was due. But for once, it wasn't my responsibility. I read Jordan's message 3 times before placing my phone beside my coffee. "Mom, the mortgage is due." For years, that sentence would have sent me rushing to my computer. I would have checked my account, transferred the money, and probably added a little extra in case they needed groceries. This time, I didn't move. I thought about the dinner at the Wooden Spoon. 4 people planning their future. 4 people deciding where they would live, how their children would grow up, and how my house might eventually fit into their financial plans. 4 people who had somehow forgotten to ask whether I had plans of my own. I typed slowly, "Good morning, Jordan. I'm doing well. Thank you for asking. As for the mortgage, that's yours to handle now. I have every confidence you and Lauren will figure it out." I stared at the message. Then I added one final sentence. "You've gotten very good at making plans without me." I pressed send. For 3 seconds, nothing happened. Then my phone rang. "Jordan." I let it ring. He called again, then again. By noon, there were 4 missed calls and 2 messages. "Mom, seriously?" Then, "We need to talk." I had spent most of my life believing that if someone needed to talk, I needed to make myself available immediately. That day, I didn't. I finished breakfast. I went for a walk. I watered Richard's roses. Then I drove to the community center for a watercolor class. The class had been Marissa's idea. "You need something that's just yours," she'd told me. I had laughed. "I'm 61. I don't have time for watercolor." "You don't have time not to." She was right. I had started going 3 weeks earlier. That was where I met Caleb Morgan, a retired contractor with paint-stained hands and an irritatingly cheerful laugh. Caleb was terrible at watercolor. He somehow made every tree look like it had survived a hurricane, but he never seemed embarrassed. One evening, I ruined a painting of a lighthouse. I kept trying to fix it until the paper was practically shredded. Caleb looked at my canvas, then he turned his own around. His lighthouse was leaning so badly it looked seasick. "Mine has 4 mistakes," he said. I laughed. "Yours has more than 4. He nodded seriously. "Exactly. That's why yours is still winning." I laughed harder than I had in months. And that evening, I realized something. For nearly 6 years, every conversation in my life had somehow led back to money. Bills, rent, mortgages, car payments, business loans, insurance, tuition. But Caleb had asked me something no one else had asked in years. "What did you want to do before life got so busy?" I had thought about it, then I said quietly, "See Italy, Rome." He smiled. "Well, that's a solvable problem." Nobody had ever made my dream sound that simple. My phone rang again. "Jordan this time," I answered. "Hello?" His voice came through immediately. "You can't just stop paying the mortgage." "I can." "Mom, we're struggling." "I know." My sales territory was cut almost in half. "I know." "Lauren is working extra hours." "I know." "Then how can you just sit there and let this happen?" I closed my eyes. Because that was the sentence I had been waiting to hear. Not, "How are you?" Not, "Are you okay?" Not, "Mom, we miss you." Just, "How can you let this happen?" I answered softly. "Jordan, I didn't create your mortgage." Silence. "You helped us buy this house. I gave you money for the down payment." "Exactly." "That was 3 years ago. But you always helped. And that's the problem." His voice hardened. "So you're punishing us because we had dinner without you?" "No." "Then what is this?" "This is me realizing I have spent 6 years confusing love with responsibility." He didn't answer. I continued. "I love you, Jordan. I love Lauren. I love your children, but I am not your financial plan." His breathing changed. "You're really serious?" "Yes." "Mom, we have a child. So do millions of families who pay their own mortgages." "That isn't fair." I almost laughed. Fair. That word had never appeared when I was wiring money at midnight. It hadn't appeared when I gave Claire another $8,000. It hadn't appeared when I postponed Italy. But suddenly fairness mattered. "I think we need to learn something new," I said. You need to learn how to stand without me holding you up." He hung up. I sat there for several minutes. My hands were trembling. I had expected relief. Instead, I felt grief. Because setting a boundary doesn't erase love. Sometimes it reveals how much love has been carrying. That evening, Jordan showed up at my house. He was still wearing his work clothes. His tie was loose. His face looked exactly like it had when he was 17 and had been caught sneaking out after midnight. "You can't do this," he said. I opened the door wider. "Come inside." He stepped into the living room. "You don't understand what this month has been like. I probably understand more than you think." "No, you don't. I had to take weekend shifts just to keep up. Lauren is exhausted. We're trying to save for the move. Everything is changing. Then perhaps you should reconsider the move." He looked at me. "What?" "You don't have to move to Millbrook, but that's our future." "Your future," he flinched. I sat down. "That's what I want you to understand. You made plans for your future without me. That's okay. You're adults. But if I'm not part of the planning, I can't be responsible for financing it." He stared at the floor. I told him about Marissa's call, the photograph, the dinner, the conversation about my house, the phrase long-term financial planning. His face changed. "We weren't planning to take your house." "I didn't say you were." "You make it sound horrible. I wasn't invited." He had no answer. I looked at my son's face and suddenly remembered him at 8 years old, running through our backyard with a missing front tooth. I remembered carrying him when he was sick. I remembered Richard teaching him how to change a tire. And I realized something painful. I wasn't angry because my children were becoming independent. I was hurt because somewhere along the way, they had become independent of me emotionally while remaining dependent on me financially. Jordan stood. "I need time to think. I understand." He walked to the door. Before leaving, he turned around. "Do you really mean it?" "Yes." He nodded. Then he left. 3 days later, Claire came to my house. She didn't bring excuses. She brought honesty. She stood on my porch with her hair pulled into a messy ponytail. "Mom," she said, "I think I owe you an apology." I stepped aside. She walked in, then she looked directly at me. "I've been scared about Pebble and Pine for 2 years. I said nothing. I kept telling myself the shop would turn around. When it didn't, I knew you'd help because you always did. Her voice cracked. "And I never stopped to ask what that cost you." That sentence hurt more than any argument could have, because it was exactly what I had wanted someone to understand. Claire wiped her eyes. "The dinner wasn't supposed to exclude you. But it did. I know. And my house?" She lowered her head. "That conversation was wrong." I sat beside her. "I don't need you to feel guilty, Claire. What do you need?" I thought about it. Then I answered. "I need you to remember that I'm your mother, not your emergency fund." She nodded. For the first time in years, my daughter reached for my hand without asking me for anything. And somehow, that small gesture felt worth more than every check I'd ever written. Claire stayed for nearly 2 hours. We talked about the dinner, the move to Millbrook, the flower shop, and all the little things neither of us had said because we had both convinced ourselves silence was easier. Before she left, she hugged me. It wasn't the quick hug she usually gave me on the way out. It was long. The kind of hug that says, "I finally understand." But understanding wasn't the same as fixing everything. The next morning, Claire called me from Pebble and Pine. "Mom, I have another problem." I closed my eyes. For a split second, the old Evelyn returned. "How much?" There was silence. Then Claire said, "I don't know yet." That answer surprised me. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I don't want to ask you for money." I sat down. She continued. "My supplier called. I owe him almost $3,000. Normally I'd panic and call you. And this time, I called the bank instead." I smiled. "That was a good decision. I don't know if they'll approve anything. Then we'll figure out what happens next." She laughed softly. "You're saying I can help you think. I don't have to pay." There was another silence. "I think I like that better," she said. That conversation changed something between us. For years, my children had come to me with problems already translated into dollar amounts. This time, Claire brought me a problem. I gave her advice. And she walked away, still carrying responsibility for the solution. It felt strange, but healthy. Jordan took longer. He didn't call for almost 2 weeks. I heard from Lauren first. She sent me a short message asking if we could talk. I agreed. She came over alone on a Sunday afternoon. She looked exhausted. I owe you an apology too, she said. You don't owe me anything. I do. She sat across from me. When Jordan and I started talking about Millbrook, I was nervous about telling you. Why? Because I thought you'd judge us. I frowned. Why would I judge you? Because we were talking about money. I almost smiled. Lauren, I've given you money for years. I know. And that's exactly why you were afraid? She nodded. I knew you were helping us more than you should have been. I knew you were dipping into savings. I knew about Italy. That stopped me. You knew, she looked ashamed. Jordan told me once. I leaned back. So you knew I wanted to go to Italy? Yes, and you still accepted the money. Her eyes filled with tears. I was selfish. The honesty disarmed me. She didn't defend herself. She didn't say she deserved it. She simply admitted it. I kept thinking you'd tell us when you'd had enough, she whispered. But you never did. That sentence stayed with me because she was right. I had never said no. I had trained them to believe my yes was permanent. I should have told you, I said. Lauren nodded. And we should have asked. We sat quietly, then she surprised me. Go to Rome. I laughed. What? Go. Lauren. No, seriously. Go. She reached into her purse and pulled out a folded piece of paper. It was a travel brochure, Rome. I stared at it. Where did you get this? Jordan and I bought it yesterday. I looked at her. We're going to handle the mortgage. You don't need to prove anything. We know. Then why? Because you deserve something that isn't connected to us. I couldn't speak for a moment. That evening, I put the brochure beside Richard's photograph. For the first time, Rome didn't feel like a dream I had abandoned. It felt possible. Meanwhile, Jordan was learning something I had spent years protecting him from: consequences. He sold the second car. He canceled several subscriptions. He stopped eating lunch out during workdays. He picked up weekend warehouse shifts. None of it was glamorous, but he did it. 2 Sundays later, he showed up with my grandson Miles. Miles ran through the door. Grandma! I caught him in my arms. Jordan stood behind him. He looked different, not physically. Something in his expression had changed. I made the mortgage payment, he said. I smiled. Good. He nodded. I didn't borrow it. Even better. He looked down. We had to change a lot. I imagine we were living like my commissions were still what they used to be. He paused. And every time we fell short, you filled the gap. I said nothing. He looked at me. I never realized how much I depended on that. That was partly my fault. He shook his head. No. You offered because you loved me. I accepted because I was comfortable. That was the first time Jordan had ever said something like that. Then he sat beside me. Mom, I want to tell you something. What? When we had that dinner, I wasn't trying to push you out. I know, but I was thinking about the future like you were already going to be there. I looked at him. What does that mean? I thought you'd eventually move near us. He smiled sadly. I thought you'd sell the house, help with the move, maybe pay some of the closing costs. I didn't even realize I'd built that into my expectations. There it was, the truth, not cruelty, not necessarily greed, something more ordinary: entitlement, and sometimes ordinary entitlement can hurt more than deliberate cruelty. I appreciate you telling me, I said. I was wrong. Yes. He laughed. You could at least pretend to soften it. I spent 6 years softening everything. He laughed again. Then he became serious. I miss you. My throat tightened. You're sitting right here. I miss talking to you. I looked at him. When was the last time you called me because you wanted to hear my voice? He couldn't answer. That silence told me enough. I don't want our relationship to be about money anymore, he said. Neither do I. He reached for my hand. Then can we start over? I squeezed his fingers. We can start today. That night, after they left, I stood in the backyard. The roses were blooming. Richard's old garden looked beautiful in the evening light. For years, I had told myself the missing stone bench didn't matter, that I could live without it. But suddenly, I wanted it again. Not because it would bring Richard back. It wouldn't. But because I had spent too many years treating my own wishes like luxuries. The next morning, I called a local stone company. I ordered the bench. When the man asked what inscription I wanted, I thought for a long time. Then I said, Richard Harper, He taught me to stand on my own feet. The irony wasn't lost on me. Richard had spent years telling me to let our children figure things out. It had taken his death for me to finally understand him. And now, for the first time since he died, I was beginning to build a life that wasn't centered on rescuing everyone else. I still loved my children. I still helped them. But I was learning the difference between helping someone stand and carrying them everywhere. And that difference was about to change our entire family. The stone bench arrived 2 weeks later. 2 men carried it through the backyard and placed it beneath Richard's favorite rose bushes. I stood there while they worked, holding the inscription card in my hands. When they finally stepped away, I ran my fingers across the letters. Richard Harper, he taught me to stand on my own feet. I smiled through tears. For years, I had thought honoring Richard meant protecting our children from every hardship. Now I understood that he had never meant that. He wanted them to become capable adults. He wanted me to remain one too. That same evening, Jordan called, "Mom, are you busy?" I looked at the bench outside the window. "No." "What's up? Can I come over?" "Of course." An hour later, Jordan arrived with Lauren. They sat at my kitchen table looking unusually serious. I poured coffee. Lauren wrapped both hands around her mug. "We've made a decision," she said. "About Millbrook?" Jordan nodded. "We're still moving." I waited. "But we're doing it differently." "How?" "We're selling the second car, clearing some debt, and we're buying a smaller house." I smiled. "That sounds sensible. It isn't as nice as the one we were originally looking at. That doesn't make it bad." Jordan nodded. "We realized we were trying to build a lifestyle before we could afford one." Lauren looked at me. "And we're not using your house in our calculations anymore." I hadn't realized how much I needed to hear that. "Thank you." Jordan leaned forward. "There's something else." "What?" "We want you to come with us when we look at houses." I smiled. "Because you need advice?" "No." He shook his head. "Because you're our mother." Those words were simple. But they landed differently now. I agreed. The next Saturday, I went with them. We visited 4 houses. None were perfect. One had terrible wallpaper. Another had a kitchen so small that opening the refrigerator blocked the back door. The 4th had a little backyard where Miles could eventually play. Jordan and Lauren loved it. I didn't say anything about price. I didn't offer money. I simply walked through the rooms with them and listened. For the first time, they weren't asking me to solve their future. They were asking me to be part of it. There was a difference. Later that afternoon, Claire called. "Mom, are you sitting down?" "Yes." "I have news." My stomach tightened automatically. "What happened?" "The bank approved a small business restructuring loan." I smiled. "That's wonderful. I did it myself." "I know. I wanted you to know because—" Her voice became quiet. "I wanted you to be proud of me." I closed my eyes. "Oh, sweetheart, I don't need you to fix anything. I just wanted you to know. I am proud of you." She started crying. "So am I," she whispered. That night, all 4 of my children, or rather, my children and their spouses, came over for dinner. I almost laughed at how different the room felt. There was no financial emergency, no checkbook, no request. Just food. Daniel brought a pie. Lauren brought salad. Jordan brought sparkling water. Claire brought flowers from her shop. She placed them in the center of my table. "They're for you." I touched the bouquet. "They're beautiful. They're not payment for anything." I laughed. "I know." She smiled. We ate. The grandchildren played under the table. For once, nobody talked about bills. Then Jordan cleared his throat. "Mom, we want to ask you something." I looked up. "Okay." He glanced at Lauren, then back at me. "What do you want?" I blinked. "What do I want?" "Yes." Nobody had asked me that question in years. I looked around the table. "I want to go to Rome." Claire smiled immediately. "Then go." "I also want to finish the rose garden." "Do it," Daniel said. "I want to take watercolor classes." Lauren laughed. "Obviously." And I hesitated. "There is someone I've met." Everyone went silent. Jordan's eyebrows lifted. "Someone?" I laughed. "Don't look so alarmed." "Who?" "His name is Caleb." Claire smiled. "Tell us about him." I described the watercolor class, the terrible paintings, his bad jokes, the way he listened. When I finished, nobody looked uncomfortable. Nobody asked whether he had money. Nobody asked whether he owned a house. Jordan simply smiled. "He sounds nice." He is. Lauren reached across the table. You deserve nice. That sentence nearly broke me because for years I had believed being needed was the highest form of love. Now I was learning that being known was better. After dinner, Claire helped me wash dishes. Mom? Yes. I keep thinking about that night at the Wooden Spoon. So do I. I wish we'd invited you. I know. I don't think we realized how much that would hurt. I don't think you did. She dried a plate. Would you have come? I smiled. If you'd asked. She nodded. Then I want to ask now. For what? To be part of our future. I looked at her. She continued. But not because we need money. I know. Because you're family. I put the dish down, then I hugged her. The next morning, I opened my laptop. I searched flights to Rome. For years, I had been afraid to even look. The prices seemed enormous. The distance seemed impossible. But this time, I booked one. I stared at the confirmation email. Rome, the 14th of October. I printed it. Then I put it beside Richard's photograph. I finally did it, I whispered. A few minutes later, my phone buzzed. It was Jordan. Mom, thank you for yesterday. I replied. Thank you for asking me to be there. His answer came quickly. We should have asked years ago. I smiled. Maybe they should have. But I had also spent years teaching them that my answer would always be yes. They hadn't been born knowing how to depend on me. I had taught them. And now, together, we were learning something new. That afternoon, Caleb called. Did you book it? How did you know? You've been talking about Rome for 3 weeks. I laughed. Yes, when? October. He paused. Good. You're not going to ask how much it cost. No. Why? Because you finally learned something. What? That your dreams aren't expenses. I smiled. For the first time in years, I didn't feel guilty about wanting something. I felt alive. And somewhere between the canceled mortgage transfer, the stone bench, the watercolor class, and that plane ticket, I realized something else. Setting a boundary hadn't pushed my family away. It had forced us to meet each other again. Not as rescuer and dependent, not as mother and children trapped in old habits, but as adults who could finally choose to love one another without keeping score. Still, there was one conversation left, and when it happened, none of us would walk away unchanged. The conversation happened 3 weeks later. Jordan called on a Friday afternoon. Mom, can everyone come over Sunday? I smiled. Is something wrong? No. His voice sounded almost amused. Something is finally right. Sunday evening, my kitchen filled with familiar voices. Jordan and Lauren arrived first. Claire and Daniel came a few minutes later. The grandchildren came running behind them. Within minutes, my quiet house sounded like it used to when Richard was alive. Laughter, running feet, someone arguing about dessert, someone else asking where the napkins were. I stood in the kitchen and watched them. For years, I had believed family meant protecting everyone from discomfort. Now I understood that family sometimes meant allowing discomfort to teach people what love couldn't. Jordan helped me carry dinner to the table. When everyone sat down, he looked at me. We want to talk about the future. I smiled. Should I be worried? Everyone laughed. No, he said. Not this time. Lauren reached for his hand. We bought the house. I looked at them. The one in Millbrook? Jordan nodded. We closed yesterday. Congratulations. Thank you. He smiled. And we did it without touching your money. I raised my glass. Then I'm especially proud. Claire laughed. Mom, you should have seen him negotiating with the lender. Jordan groaned. I was good. You were terrified, Lauren said. I was strategically concerned. Everyone laughed, then Jordan became serious. There was something else we wanted you to know. He looked at me. We changed the paperwork. What paperwork? The financial plans. My smile faded slightly. We removed your house completely. I stared at him. It was never ours. He continued. We had no right to build plans around it. I nodded slowly. Thank you, and we started our own savings account for Miles. Lauren added, we're also putting a little aside for emergencies. I smiled. That is what adults do. Jordan grinned. Apparently, we're learning. Claire raised her glass. To learning. We all laughed, then Daniel spoke. There is something we haven't told you. I looked at him. What's that? He smiled. Claire wants to expand Petal and Pine. My daughter looked embarrassed. Daniel. What? You weren't supposed to tell her yet. I looked at Claire. Expand, she nodded. Maybe. How? A second location. I waited. She immediately said, "I'm not asking you for money." I burst out laughing. "I know. I just wanted to tell you. I'd love to hear about it." She pulled out her phone and showed me pictures of a small storefront downtown. It was beautiful. Natural light. Tall windows, old brick walls. I could see why she loved it. "It needs work," she said. "So did the first shop." She smiled. "Exactly." I handed her phone back. "You'll figure it out." She looked at me. "I will," and I knew she meant it. Dinner continued. The grandchildren fought over a piece of pie. Lauren spilled water. Daniel accidentally knocked over a napkin holder. Jordan laughed until he couldn't breathe. For a moment, I could almost hear Richard laughing too. After everyone left, I sat alone at the table. There were crumbs everywhere. Half-empty glasses, a child's toy beneath one chair. It was a mess. And it was beautiful. My phone buzzed. A message from Jordan. "Mom, thank you for giving us the chance to grow up." I stared at it. Then another message arrived. I know I didn't understand before. I typed back, "Neither did I." I put my phone down. Then I walked outside. The stone bench beneath the roses was illuminated by the porch light. I sat down. Richard's name was beneath my fingertips. "I finally understand," I whispered. The next morning, I met Caleb at the community center. He was already painting. "What are you working on?" "A surprise." "For me?" "Maybe." I sat beside him. He turned the canvas around. It was a watercolor of Rome. A street lined with old buildings, warm sunlight. A tiny fountain in the distance. I stared at it. "You painted this?" "Attempted to." "It's beautiful." He smiled. "Thought you should have something to look at while you're waiting for October." I felt tears sting my eyes. "Thank you." He shrugged. "It's just paint." "No." I touched the edge of the canvas. "It's not." That evening, I packed my first suitcase. October was still weeks away, but I didn't care. For years, my dreams had remained imaginary because I was always waiting for the right time. There was always another bill, another emergency, another reason to postpone. Now there wasn't. I folded a dress into the suitcase, then another. I packed comfortable shoes, a camera, Richard's old watch, and the small watercolor Caleb had painted. I left room for souvenirs. That was important. I wanted to come home carrying something that had nothing to do with anyone else's emergency. Before bed, I checked my bank account. The balance wasn't enormous, but it was mine. I had rebuilt enough of my savings to breathe again. I didn't feel rich. I felt free. There is a difference. A week later, Claire stopped by. She sat beside me on the porch. "Mom? Yes? Do you regret helping us?" I thought about it. "No." She looked surprised. "Really?" "I don't regret loving you." She waited. "But I regret not loving myself enough at the same time." Her eyes filled. "I understand." "I hope you do." She leaned against my shoulder. "I think I finally do." We sat quietly, then she smiled. "Do you think you'll come to the new shop opening?" I laughed. "Of course." "Even if it's raining?" "Especially if it's raining." She smiled. "Good." That night, I received another message, this time from Jordan. "Can we have dinner before you leave for Rome?" I replied, "I'd like that." Then I stared at the screen. 6 months earlier, I would have expected the next sentence to be about money. It wasn't. He wrote, "I just want to spend time with my mom." I set the phone down, and for the first time, I understood what my boundary had really accomplished. I hadn't stopped being generous. I had simply stopped making generosity the price of belonging. My children weren't perfect. Neither was I. But we were finally learning how to be a family without a financial contract between us. And that was worth more than every mortgage payment I had ever made. The night before my flight to Rome, my house was quiet. My suitcase stood beside the bedroom door. My passport was on the dresser. The stone bench beneath Richard's roses was visible through the window. For years, I had imagined this moment. But somehow, I had always imagined it happening for someone else. A child graduating, a child buying a house, a child opening a business, a child needing something. That night, for once, the moment belonged entirely to me. The next morning, Jordan, Lauren, Claire, Daniel, and the grandchildren arrived early. My kitchen became crowded within minutes. Miles ran around the table. Little Sophie followed him with a stuffed rabbit. Claire brought coffee. Lauren brought pastries. Jordan carried my suitcase toward the front door. "I've got it," he said. "I can carry my own suitcase." "I know," he smiled. I just wanted to. I looked at him. That tiny gesture said more than an apology ever could. Before I left, Jordan pulled me aside. Mom, yes? I need to tell you something. I waited. I was angry when you stopped paying the mortgage. I know. I thought you were abandoning us. I stayed quiet. But now I realize you weren't abandoning us. He swallowed. You were giving us a chance. I nodded. You needed to learn that you could do it. He smiled. We did. Then he hugged me, not the quick hug of someone rushing out the door. A real hug, the kind I remembered from when he was a little boy. I love you, Mom. I love you too. Claire hugged me next, then Lauren, then Daniel. The grandchildren nearly knocked me over. For a few minutes, everyone was talking at once. Then Claire handed me an envelope. What is this? Open it. Inside was a photograph. It showed our entire family at the dinner table. Everyone was laughing. I was in the center, not at the edge, not missing. Not behind the camera. Right in the middle, on the back, Claire had written, "You were never supposed to be our bank account. You were always supposed to be our mom." I couldn't hold back my tears. I hugged her, then I looked at Jordan. He smiled. We finally got it. I nodded. Yes, you did. At the airport, I sat by the window waiting to board. For the first time in years, I wasn't checking my phone for emergencies. No one needed a payment. No one needed a transfer. No one needed me to fix something. My phone buzzed. A message from Jordan. Have a safe flight. Send pictures. Then Claire. Enjoy every second. Lauren, eat something amazing for me. I smiled. Nobody asked me for anything. They simply wanted me to enjoy myself. When the plane lifted into the sky, I looked down at the city disappearing beneath the clouds. I thought about Richard. I wondered what he would say. I could almost hear him. About time, Dee. I laughed quietly. Rome was everything I had imagined and nothing like I expected. The streets were crowded. The buildings were older than anything I'd ever seen. The food was incredible. I walked until my feet hurt. I sat in little cafes. I took pictures of fountains and churches and narrow streets. One afternoon, I sat on a bench overlooking a busy square and realized I hadn't thought about money for almost an entire day. Not once. I had spent years believing sacrifice was proof of love. But Rome taught me something different. Love didn't require disappearance. I could love my children and still have a life. I could help them without rescuing them. I could say no without becoming cruel, and I could spend money on myself without feeling guilty. When I returned home, the stone bench was still beneath Richard's roses. I sat there with the photograph from Claire. A week later, the whole family came over again. This time, there was no emergency, no mortgage, no overdue invoice, no financial crisis. Just dinner. Jordan told me about his new job territory. Lauren had started a savings plan. Claire's second shop was moving forward. Daniel was helping her renovate the storefront. The grandchildren argued about who got the last piece of pie. I listened. I laughed. I watched. And I realized how much I had almost missed while being busy paying for everyone's future. After dinner, Jordan helped me clear the plates. "You know," he said, "I used to think you were always going to be there to fix everything. I know, I was wrong." "Yes," he laughed. "You really aren't going to make this easy for me, are you?" "No." He shook his head. "Fair enough." Then he became serious. "I think Dad would be proud of you." I stopped moving. "Why?" "Because he always told you to let us figure things out." I smiled. He did. Jordan looked toward the backyard, and you finally listened. I looked at Richard's bench through the window. Yes. A few days later, I returned to watercolor class. Caleb was sitting in my usual chair. He looked up. "Welcome back, traveler." I smiled. "You saved my seat." Of course. I sat beside him. "How was Rome?" "Perfect. Bring me anything." I handed him a small postcard. He read it and smiled. Then he looked at me. "You look different." "How? Lighter." I thought about that. He was right. I was lighter, not because my problems had disappeared, not because my children had suddenly become perfect, but because I had finally stopped carrying responsibilities that were never mine. I had spent 6 years believing that being a good mother meant making sure my children never struggled. Now I knew better. A good mother can help. A good mother can encourage. A good mother can open a door. But sometimes the greatest gift she can give her children is the opportunity to walk through it on their own. The mortgage was due that Tuesday morning. My son expected me to pay it. I didn't. And that single decision changed our family, not because I punished them, not because I stopped loving them, but because I finally stopped allowing money to speak for love. My children learned how to stand. I learned how to live. And somewhere between the kitchen table, Richard's rose garden, a watercolor class, and the streets of Rome, I found the woman I had almost forgotten. Her name was Evelyn Harper. She wasn't just mom. She wasn't just a widow. She wasn't a checking account. She was a woman who still had dreams. A woman who could still laugh. A woman who could still fall in love. A woman who could say no. A woman who could say yes. And after years of putting everyone else's future first, I finally understood something Richard had known all along. You can love people deeply without carrying them forever. Sometimes, letting someone stand on their own feet is the most loving thing you can do. And sometimes, when you finally put down everyone else's burdens, you discover that your own life was waiting for you all along.